overview of the LISA Consortium. And before I put this talk together, I had some input from some of the folks in Canada about some of the issues they'd like addressed with respect to the LISA Consortium. So I hope I can answer them. And of course, if you have questions, you can contact me after the talk or ask questions right after, whatever. I'm happy to explain anything. So a brief overview of LISA. It's a European Space Agency mission, so they're the leads. And the Space Agency has the overall mission definition, management, and performance responsibilities. So this means the space segment, operation ground segment, science operations centers, and of course the launch. The different member states are responsible for development and provisions of nationally funded contributions under the LISA Consortium umbrella, and data processing provisions, and of course, whatever nationally funded activities they may be given. NASA is contributing to the mission, development of space segment contributions, contributions to ground segment and science segments. In terms of the consortium management, there's different structures. Of course, there's European Space Agency responsibilities, but the LISA Consortium itself has responsibilities that you've already heard from some of the talks, like the LISA instrumentation group or the LISA data processing group. In terms of LISA science, there's the different work packages, LISA Data Challenge, Astrophysics, Cosmology, Fundamental Physics, and Waveforms. And we had nice talks from those folks. And then there's different groups like Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. There's the Membership Management Team. There's the Publication and Presentation Committee, Advocacy and Outreach, and the LISA Early Career Scientists Group. There's an executive committee that makes decisions on the consortium structure. There's a consortium board with representation from the different countries involved in the consortium. And then there's the National Project Managers Board, which has members from the different space agencies and national funding organizations. And so this is the diagram of how they're all connected within the LISA Consortium. There's approximately 1,400 consortium members as of April 2001. This was 726 associate members, 645 full members, with a total full-time equivalent of 246. And the medium FTE from a full member is 0.3. There's 60 different nationalities. And when we took a snapshot a couple weeks ago, there was already 18 members of the LISA Consortium from Canada. So one of the issues I was asked to address is, how do you join the consortium? And in terms of being a full member, we talk about external groups joining the consortium. Now, a group can be as small as one, but it can be more. And it doesn't necessarily have to be from the same institution. So for example, in Vancouver, you could have UBC and Triumph joining together to form a group, or they could have separate groups. Groups have commitments to work, dedicated FTEs that are meant to help shape the mission. They will have full access to all appropriate consortium information. They will contribute to discussions of mission critical decisions, and usually their contribution to decisions works their way through the different working groups into how decisions are made. The external groups are led by a lead scientist. And so when you join the consortium as a group, there will be a lead scientist. And then the group will define its firm commitment to the consortium. The different members of the group are then chosen by the lead scientist and presented. All members must be named and put forward to the Consortium Application Review Board for approval. In terms of commitments directly to the goals and work of the consortium, this could be the development of technology and the design of flight hardware for consortium deliverables. This could be performing tests of parts of the LISA instrument. This could be the development of data analysis pipelines or parts of one. This could be contributions to management or commitments to management, the different working groups, or the performance of a coordination role. As a full member, you have rights within the consortium. You have access to the consortium IT services, the different documents, information and products of the consortium. You have access to the data that the consortium produces during the development and operations. This means simulated data now and real strain data later. You have access to use this information to write papers and technical notes and make presentations using the consortium materials. But when you write papers and have presentations, those fall within the rules of the LISA Consortium publication and presentation guidelines. There's a proposal that's been working its way up through the consortium to have what's known as legacy authorship. And this is sort of the carrot that's provided now for members to do hard work for the consortium now with the promise that you can earn the right to appear as authors on consortium papers presenting LISA data releases and results of key investigations led by the consortium upon reaching a threshold of 2 years cumulative FTE. And this could be work related to work package deliverables and consortium processes, coordination, governance, advocacy and outreach work, producing project documents and software tools, but not necessarily research articles is what earns you legacy authorship. And so if you do get this 2 years of FTE, the proposal is that you would earn your rights to having your name on the consortium papers for the observations, even if you're no longer a member of the consortium at that time in the future. Then there's associate membership in the consortium. You work in the context of the mission, but have no obligations and no decision-making power. You have appropriate access to consortium IT services, information products, according to whatever working groups you participate in. You have access to LISA simulated data produced within your working group. You can write papers and technical notes and make presentations using the LISA consortium materials within the guidelines of the consortium publication and presentation guidelines. So for example, as an associate member, you could contribute to measurement science working group, waveform modeling, fundamental physics, cosmology, astrophysics, advocacy and outreach, LISA data challenges. These are examples of where you can contribute as an associate member. Now, actually joining the LISA consortium is really not that painful of a process. You use the materials provided on the web pages, and there are templates provided on the web pages showing you how you can apply. There's the link there, signuplisa.org. The articles, the templates that you need for joining are at this link here. There's a document, the LISA Consortium application process, at that same link. There's a hyperlink on the PDF I posted that explains the procedures and the rights. The group leader provides names, working group participation, expertise of the members, and then the FTEs. And it really is a straightforward process. It's something that should not be feared And the members of the consortium are happy to help you answer any questions you might have. I was asked to address national involvement. And, for example, with Canada, your contribution that you want to make as a nation should be discussed with the leadership of the LISA consortium and the representation of the European Space Agency within the consortium. And of course, this could be hardware contributions, testing hardware, scientific contributions. We've heard already discussions about computing contributions. And of course, you want to discuss this with the leadership. In terms of contributions as a country, just as advice, it's good to have regular national meetings to discuss projects. And for example, in France, where I am, we have telecons every 2 weeks. The telecons tend to be centered around hardware work that's going on, but not necessarily restricted to that. But it's very productive to meet regularly, and also constructive to meet with others with the same common interests and goals. So it has been a very positive process. I was asked to address the evolution of the consortium. And so we're heading towards mission adoption in 2024. And I think it'd be good to have the tasks defined at that time. So for Canada, have a good picture of the issues that you want to address and the contributions you want to make by that time. The consortium is young. We're learning and making adjustments. And as we move towards launch and observing with real observations, with real strain data, the LISA consortium will certainly need to evolve. But how that evolution is going to take place is not defined at this time, although we have a definition of the LISA consortium now. And just to give you kind of an example, so I've grown up and spent my career in the LIGO Virgo world, and in there, for example, you're just sort of expecting that you have access to all the strain data and all the associated data. But the LISA mission is very different because it is a space mission, and so you have the LISA consortium, but you have the different space agencies, for example, led by the European Space Agency. But you also have the involvement of industrial partners that are going to have major responsibilities for constructing the experiment and launching it. So the world of the LISA consortium is different than LIGO Virgo, and it's different than I would say observational astronomy. So it is a different beast, but it's also a very positive one. So I think good to talk about that. So I gave half my time for the presentation in hope that there'd be lots of discussion and questions about the consortium. And if you want to read more, there's plenty of material, but there's the proposal, for example, and explanations of the science themes. So let's have some questions now about the consortium.
All right. Well, first, let's all thank Nelson for a fine talk. And we do have some questions here. And the first one was, I see, came from Daryl. And she says, Nelson, maybe you mentioned this, but how does the consortium anticipate, quote unquote, cataloging contributed FTEs? For example, the legacy authorship you mentioned, but also for keeping your group membership active.
Yeah, there's a management committee for that's going to be responsible for keeping track of who's belonging. But in terms of calculating FTEs for legacy authorship, let me just get back to that slide. That's something we're still working on. And so it's going to have to be a combination between, where's that? Here we go. And I've gone too far. Drats. A combination between the membership management and the publication and presentation committee. So we haven't worked it out yet, but we're going to need to keep track, or we do keep track already, of the membership and then the promises for the FTE. We don't really review that yet, but at some point I think that will be. And it's going to be some combination of keeping track of the membership and tabulating it. So that's a responsibility that we know exists, but we haven't implemented yet.
All right, the next question came from Juna, who says that she's heard that there are plans to restructure the consortium at some point, potentially involving leadership elections. And could you please comment?
Yeah, in fact, that's already going forward. So, for example, the different working groups have chairs, and we started in a situation where the chairs were appointed, and we're moving to one now. I don't think some combination of election and appointments, depending on the working group. But there's also the very active desire to have early career researchers have leadership responsibilities. So you're going to start seeing these, for example, these science working groups that current chairs are going to cycle out, and some of the new chairs that are going to be coming in have been identified as early career scientists. And so the LISA early career scientists, or the LECs, have been very active and very vocal in a good way about representing the needs and the protecting the early career scientists. And so one of the things we're going to see is chairs that are going to be, the desire is going to have early career chairs. So there's going to be elections and some combination of elections and appointments across all the working groups. And then I think that we're talking about, for example, in these science groups, of having 4 co-chairs with terms of 4 years and cycling people out after 4 years.
All right, let me jump to a related question that I see in this chat window here, which is, maybe you've partly addressed this, but the question was, how are consortium members selected for leadership roles in the working groups or committees? So that touches on what you were just discussing.
Well, I think up till now, it's, when the consortium was very young, it was by appointment. And typically what that means are, who are the people really dedicating themselves to the consortium. So in the different working groups, you've had people that were willing to take responsibility. And so the consortium gave them responsibility of being co-chairs. But as you heard from the talks over the last couple of days, these working groups are now extremely well populated. And you have a number of very active researchers in these working groups. So you really have a pool of people that you can draw upon for leadership. And that's why having elections in these working groups makes sense, because there's so many people, and there's so many people willing to take leadership responsibilities, and there's a large number of members of the group that you can have elections.
All right, next question. Someone says, I am already an associate member in the Astro working group. How can I join more working groups?
I think that's just, there's on the links that were given for associate membership, I think you can just update it there. I think you can just resend in your information with other working groups, and that should probably be sufficient. Of course, before you do that, you should make contact with the working group chairs of the other working groups you're interested in. And so that, for example, the management team, if they ask the working group chairs about your contributions, they would know about it. but as I alluded to in the start of the talk, everything's pretty loose so far, and the consortium's been very positive. So I don't. It's you need to notify the formally the membership that you want to have additional working groups, but that's not a problem. In fact, that's a good thing. So you're not going to meet any resistance.
Good. Could you say more about the publication rules and regulations within the LISA consortium and how
it's been so we actually are we've been talking about this a lot, and we've have a draft guidelines that exists, but it has not been formally approved. One of the goals was we really don't want to get in the way of science with rules. So for example, it's a very different world in the LISA consortium than in LIGO Virgo or LIGO Virgo Cagra now, where observations are happening and reviews have been fairly strict. Right now, we don't want to get in the way of publications in science. So it's quite easy to actually not have papers reviewed at all. Although, as you start having contributions from the working groups as a whole, or where you're exchanging ideas within the working group, then there's the desire to have some communication. So circulating drafts in advance before they appear on archive or get submitted so that there can be comment on this. But I think a major concern or a major goal of the publication presentation committee is to make sure that we're telling the same correct story about LISA. So for example, you don't want to have different people saying that the sensitivities of LISA are going to be different. We want to make sure that the story that's being told about LISA, the sensitivity that LISA will have, the objects that it's dedicated to observe are the same. We want to be telling a unified story. So that's one of the things we're looking out for. But so far, we've actually, we review papers, for example, a lot from cosmology, because they actually have a formal stamp that they gave publications. But the majority of papers that are coming from the working groups are not reviewed. They don't need to be, but we're going to start seeing more formal publications, for example, white papers that are the products of the entire working group, and those things will go through some level of review.
Okay, the next question concerns new membership applications. How are these dealt with in terms of deadlines? Are these done as they are received, or are there deadlines throughout the year? How are they processed?
I believe it's as they're received, but they're received and then they get approved by the consortium board and the executive committee. So there is some delta T corresponding to the submission and then getting them approved. And then once they're approved, getting the input into the computers. But they're acted on as they're received, and then the consortium board and the executive committee they meet regularly, but not every day. So once they're received, they get approved after some delta T, but it's not very long.
All right. So you mentioned that discussions with the LISA consortium and with the European Space Agency are needed for issues of national involvement, for example, hardware contributions. Could you say more about who the key figures are there?
Well, I think, for example, there are people like Martin Hewittson, Stefano Vitali, Karsten Donsman, Antoine Petitot. Those are people within the consortium that have the contact with the European Space Agency. So I would recommend folks like that to get started, and they'll point you in the right direction. But you know, it's a very serious thing constructing a space mission. So there is quite a formal interplay between the European Space Agency and the consortium leadership on these things, so that you want to make sure that everyone's on board with the contributions. But again, this is a positive thing, but it's just more about making sure that everyone understands what the desires are for contributions.
And indeed, that will be our next talk. But another question first. What would you recommend as the first step for someone exploring LISA consortium membership? Should they just dive in and apply, or should they contact working group chairs first for some informal discussion? What do you recommend?
I really do recommend discussion with the working group chairs. So if you have an interest in particular groups, you know, whether it's science or, you know, contributing to instrumentation or the data processing, or even diversity and outreach, talk to the group chairs and understand what's going on in those groups, and after that, make your application, I would say.
All right, another question. Does the consortium have some well-defined service work requirement for full members?
Well, I mean, there's so many different things that you could do, but you're contributing to the consortium, you're contributing to the mission. So, you know, it's not necessarily about doing some interesting astrophysics or cosmology, but really deliverables that's going to make the LISA mission and the LISA consortium a success in the 2030s. So, you know, whether it's developing a pipeline, whether it's testing equipment, I mean, something that's really dedicated to the success of the LISA mission and the LISA consortium. So that can mean dirty work. And but, you know, so like I said earlier, the carrot can be ultimately your name on those major discoveries that are going to happen in the 2030s.
All right, with that, I think we have run out of time, and let's all thank Nelson once again, show our appreciation. And then we're going to move to our next talk, which is in fact about hardware opportunities. And this talk, I believe, may be a joint presentation. I'm not quite sure, but I'm sure that the speaker will be named Martin, because we have two people who've been preparing this, Martin Hewittson. So Martin Hewittson is at the AEI MPG Hanover, and he has the, I'm reliably informed, the impressive sounding title of Chair of the Consortium's Formulation Management Team, which he will probably have to explain to us, and also leads the LISA Consortium's instrumentation group. We're also pleased to have Martin Geller with the European Space Agency, and he is the LISA Mission Study Manager at ESA. So welcome to both of you.